So thank you very much, everyone. So I'm Diptesh Patel. I lead a function in DWP called Hybrid Cloud Services, part of our digital function, where I'm responsible for all of our hosting arrangements, and whether that's our data centers, or if it's our cloud capability, or if it's even with some of our managed service providers. So I was going to talk today about achieving cloud adoption at enterprise scale. So I'll explain a bit more about DWP in a moment, but actually over the last year or so I've been at DWP, year and a half, and I've previously worked at other government departments. It's been really interesting to see when we talk about adopting cloud, how it can be massively different in an organisation that's kind of this small to the size of DWP. We've got loads of legacy systems, mainframes still, tons of services that are probably still on very old, out-of-date software. And so what are we doing, and what are some of the challenges we've had, and some of the learning that we have around adopting cloud at enterprise scale? So just a bit about DWP. So we serve over 20 million citizens, and so effectively most citizens will have contact with DWP as part of their life. We look after child maintenance, ill health benefits, and we help and job those seeking employment as well. And we effectively support the most critical and vulnerable citizens across the UK. So we've got a very, very critical and important mission. About 84,000 employees, so that's quite a lot across the whole of the UK. And that could be on the high street, where we've got Job Centre Pluses, or it could be within our core policy and operations team, or even our digital function as well. So a lot of resources that are teams that support all of the work we do across the department. We're running over 55 million lines of code. That's not just in public cloud. We do that across all of our systems and services. So it's a substantial estate with over 10,000 changes a year. It's actually one of Europe's largest IT estates. Handling over 200 million calls a year, again through a number of services that we are now starting to host in cloud as well. So always evolving and iterating. And finally, we make a substantial number of payments out every day. It's 2.8 million payments a day, totaling between 465 and £500 million a day. So it's over 170 billion pound a year. So that's a lot of money that we are responsible for. The systems and services that we maintain and provide are really critical to supporting all of those payments and going out to all citizens. So I want to talk about what hybrid cloud means to DWP. So we have lots of different definitions, and as I mentioned, we've been on a journey that I'm going to go through in a moment. But we effectively have been really focused on concentrating on consolidating all of our hosting arrangements into basically two sets. And one is using our own on-premises data centers, which previously, as I've talked about journey, has been completely split across a number of service providers. And then the second around making sure that we have our hyperscale public cloud capability as well, for which AWS is one. We're using VMware on AWS, and we'll use other providers as well. And then having the right connectivity between the two to make sure that it is hybrid in nature, and we can actually move workloads between them as we start to then transform and re-architect our applications. So really key to us is around how we can join this all up into a single function. It means that when someone comes and says, right, we need to host a digital application, we can say it goes into our host environment. And over time, we'll start to then merge that and start to just keep that into our longer term strategy, which I'll talk about in a moment, which is on public cloud. So you may or may not be able to read it. Hopefully you can. I will go through each box one by one. So traditionally, our IT has been completely outsourced. So it was outsourced with a number of big systems integrators, and that over 24 months has been completely disaggregated and moved back into our own organisation. And that was outsourced for a very long time, for 24 years. And I think the important thing to note here is that, and this is where we come into the lessons learned, that it's not just about the technical aspects, about the people and the processes and how we have actually achieved some of that. And we have done it well in some cases, but not in others. So there's a lot to learn from actually working in what we describe as a bimodal environment with a load of technology that's quite old, antiquated, and that we need to now move that into new hosting arrangements. So our hosting exit, by moving away from some of these large systems integrators, we've actually saved quite a lot of money. We've then started to reiterate or iterate our processes around how we start to manage these environments. But it's, again, a constant effort. We still today are dealing with how we've brought that across into our environment and what we need to do to manage that well in life. And cloud transformation plays, very, very passionate about this part. So I'm very glad to be owning all of our hosted environments, but the most passionate part is about how we can transform those applications and move away from our data centers into a public cloud. And so we've started building out some of those products that we talked about, building our foundations in public cloud. We've also started around how we have the connectivity that I described earlier so that we can have seamless integration, start to reuse services. So we've got a number of RESTful APIs now that we start to use to be able to integrate better between applications rather than creating a load of siloed systems. And then accelerating to enterprise scale, as we move more and more across, and this is where I really want to talk to the community today, is it's not just about you've suddenly adopted cloud and off we go and use it. There's a big, big set of work behind it. How do we operate it? How do we manage the environment? How do we ensure the costs are right? How do we manage the security foundations? How do we make sure we've got reliability? And we're looking at things like site reliability engineering now and deploying that across their environment. So lots to kind of consider around making sure that we can adopt this for the future years, running, as I mentioned, some of our most critical applications for the UK citizen, but also doing it securely and safely as well. And now we've moved across, as we talk about strategic foundations, which I'll talk about in a moment, is some of the landing zones there to support reuse and quicker agility for those application teams to start to consume these services as well. And benefits realization. So may not seem important, but just some very simple things we've started to do now. And when I talk about some of the challenges we've had, governance can also be very difficult in a large organisation, and especially government as well. And that's something that we're trying to get better at and operate. But doing things like basic things around shutting down instances, using reserved instances, what can we do to make sure we operate the service so that we're getting the best value out of it as well? It's not just about rehosting for us, it has been. It's about what can we do to move to much more cloud native and to use some of the stack to deliver the best out of cloud. So where are we now? What's our design principles? I get asked very often around what's our strategy. Are we putting things in our own data center, or are we going to put it into public cloud? And I like to share this, and this is in line with government design service principles. What are we doing to move to up the stack and across from where we are in our data centers on the left and move all the way across into more software as a service and across into containerization and serverless? I think as we start to look at it now, I'd probably say we're at 2.5 and maybe 3. We're starting to look at containerization. Do we always agree with it? No. I know there's some colleagues here from other organizations that we've been talking to recently. There'll always be different opinions within technical communities, within our product teams about what's the best thing to do to move across. But we certainly will look to move up the stack. For those who are interested in the security aspects, if you look at the National Cyber Security Centre website, so ncse.gov.uk, it talks about some of the patterns around using software as a service, some of the security considerations and what we do around containers. So really worth having a look at the website as well for the NCSE. So building the foundations. It's not just about these. These are some of the services that we have available now. We've spent a long time trying to, and there's some good lessons learned about what should we be building and the right things to be building. So focus for us is having that secure adoption, those secure environments. So it's not just all about can we just get a developer and a project team onto consuming things. We need to make sure we're building the right things to be able to support enterprise adoption. So these are some of the shared services and the foundations that we've been building and that we continue to build going along. So one of my colleagues has this passion for the city, for the ecosystem. So hopefully you can see this, and I'll talk through this briefly. We want to ensure that as we move to enterprise scale, it's not, as I mentioned, just about some of the technical components. It's about what we do to join up across our cost optimization, our business planning, our financial planning, what we start to do around operations and security, making sure that everything is joined up so we've got a single view as we start to move to consuming more at scale. So if we move back to the left and move along, these are all the core functions that we're starting to do. We're trying to productize these as services so that developers out there don't need to come along and build their own stacks. It happens still. We still have siloed build, and over the next few months and years, we'll start to now integrate those into single services, shared services, as part of this ecosystem, to then help to adopt services in a more structured and secure way. So rather than having different sets of services, a good example is around GitLab and source control. We've actually just recently consolidated from 14 different repositories into one. We still have a couple more left, but we're starting to now move to that, working with teams, collaborating to start to move that all across into single siloed services, which can then be horizontally used. I'll just quickly go back, actually, licensing. Licensing has become really, really important to us. It's great to see services such as Amazon Marketplace available, and private marketplace launch has been really, really helpful. We've seen that as we start to enable developer communities to start to use cloud more and much more quickly, we've opened up Marketplace, but that can also then have a bit of an impact when services and licensed services are used and the cost spirals out of control. An example is that using some routing capability for some very simple services, so paying a smaller amount with a provider to host internet-facing services, all of a sudden has trebled or quadrupled in cost moving to cloud because the wrong services were chosen to part of the build and the licensing arrangements. So licensing is becoming much more important as well to us around making sure that we can optimize all of our applications using the right services rather than just taking the existing license regime on any on-premises services and moving them across into public cloud. So what we've learned, so it's not an overnight change to integrate legacy new. And what we mean by that is, it is, as I mentioned earlier, a number of legacy services. We can't just all of a sudden take processes and the way that we monitor services on a mainframe and some checklists, and then start to take those and say, right, we're moving to cloud overnight. It just doesn't happen. And actually, that's something that we've really, really learned, that we've got to look at how we work with our developers and how we start to look at what can we take as part of a product path and say, what can we do to transform that and move it into a cloud environment, public cloud. There's also other things around processes, so I mentioned bimodal, so our operations and service teams may still be feeling around, well, why are we not using ITIL? It's a very, very common question. Why are we going for release and change management? We want to be able to be much more agile and do releases every few minutes, not every day or every week, and submit some paperwork. And so at enterprise scale, it's something that really, really has resonated with us, that we now need to understand and do more to bring colleagues along and to help to understand things. And so that's been a massive transformational learn, that it is a journey that will constantly take some time. Understand what our product teams want better. It was really great to meet colleagues I've worked with previously here. And this is something that they've mentioned for ages and ages and ages, and it just completely, it still remains the most important thing to us around that and communicating and engaging with product teams. There is no point building services for shared reuse if they're not going to be used. So we absolutely need to work with the product teams, and by product teams I mean those who build applications. I'll give you an example in a moment, so that they understand what we have available and what we need to do as well to build our backlog pipeline to build the right services for reuse going forward. And that still continues to be our main challenge and focus area. So don't be siloed. And again, we've just run 6 roadshows, and this links a bit to the comms and engagement. 6 roadshows across the UK in all of our DWP digital hubs. And we've invited, similar to today, we had a non-technical track and a technical track, but and that's been really helpful. In fact, the most positive feedback is around, thank you for thinking about how moving to enterprise scale on cloud actually affects those who don't understand it. I still have people in my team who've questioned and said, well, does it actually work? Is it secure? Where is it hosted? I did have one person say, is it actually hosted in the cloud? Because, who didn't really understand. And so it's really, really important to make sure that we take the entire team across. It's a transformation across all of our digital teams. It's not just one function on hosting. So things we've learned from there around cost management, our finance teams. Why would you go and purchase reserved instances? Why would you want to look at a contractual arrangement which means that you'd save millions of pounds when they don't really understand? So we're really, really keen on making sure that those colleagues in finance, in training, making sure that we can work with providers such as AWS to train our teams as well, to retrain for those who've been working in traditional engineering functions, and also around what we can do around service operations and management. It is different. How can we make sure we operate in that bimodal way? And that's been really, really important to us as well. And it is absolutely possible to achieve amazing outcomes. And I say that, again, linking to keep iterating. So we've got some brilliant, amazing things we've achieved around moving some services to public cloud. Our consumption has increased. Consumption necessarily doesn't mean efficiency, but we've moved services across and we've saved quite a lot of money from moving those across. So we're delivering citizen-facing services. If you look at FitNote and other services that are on DWP's website, Tell Us Once, using these cloud services. And again, by keep iterating our products, how we start to consume cloud, how we start to offer those shared services, it will never be perfect first time. And so rather than trying to achieve the complete perfect solution on day one, we want to keep iterating, and through there we learn. I mentioned comms and engagement, and I think, again, I just wanted to re-emphasize that. Working with everyone, whether it's our operations team, our security team, which still is really, really important and can present some challenges as well. Is cloud secure? It's okay in our data center, but it's not necessarily in the cloud. And how we can help them and collaborate with them to help to understand some of the risks around public cloud that may not be the same risks, it may be different, and helping to understand that. So I wanted to just go for just a very brief case study. I think it's a fantastic case study. I've not put all the detail in here because there's about 15 or 20 slides, and I thought, let me just go through some of the key things around Job Seekers Allowance. So Job Seekers Allowance, what's it for? I won't read that out, but it's a really important service, and it's quite critical to the way that to how DWP agents, all of those calls, all of those in Job Centre Plus, and out in the field and out in the communities, but also how citizens connect online. And so it's really important that we start to, we looked at Job Seekers Allowance and say, what can we do? Not just to rehost it into public cloud, but actually reimagine the whole experience, try and improve it so that we can get better efficiency. And I'll talk about some of the before and after experiences from our beta, and the service will be going live towards the end of May. So it's a critical service. It's important that we get citizens to be able to use this efficiently. So it's not all just about the technology. So just some summary of some of the changes and some of the feedback we've seen from some of the beta. So a lot of confused users. So over 1,700 questions to go and make a job seeker's application. If I've got a process map, which would probably stretch from all the way across the room here, around how we actually used to run Job Seekers Allowance. 1,700 questions and a tree that goes along through there. Lots of paper claims, lots of administration, a real challenge. And so as part of this journey, it's not, as I said, about rehosting. We've looked at all of the business processes and taken it from business process all the way through to technology. What can we do to try and improve that? And actually our beta has shown that if by improving this, by making some of these changes, refactoring it, reapplications, changing the business processes, some of the sort of amazing results that we've seen. And these will form part of our KPIs moving forward. So 20 minutes to complete a claim, or less than 20 minutes, is fantastic, rather than 1,700 questions that could take over an hour. So some of these things around, as we digitalise and use these technologies, some of the benefits we can have. For those technical colleagues in here, hopefully you can probably see it on this screen a bit better, but maybe on there as well. These are some of the technical stack and open source where possible. So we've actually, rather than just, as I said, lifted and shifted from one environment to another, we've completely re-engineered the application. So these are some of the technologies that we've taken all the way through end to end to make sure that we can actually deliver an open source solution that is then portable as well and that can always be iterated. So what's next? Collaboration. We absolutely need to collaborate with everyone. The community here is. I'm very grateful to Phil and the team and for having this opportunity to come and talk to you. We need to talk to colleagues here because we need to understand more around what we can do to improve the way we do things, but also collaborate internally, ensure that we are working together and not in different silos. Efficiency. Again, create reusable products and services. We've done some analysis around managing individual stacks, and it can take 20, 30, 40 full-time employed resources to manage these in silos. If we bring it all together and we do it well, then we can start to be much more efficient and build the right shared services. Develop. So our organisation, this is really critical, and I've got a web page at the bottom. So for those who would like to join the department, please reach out. We're really keen on building the right sustainable organisation. So we work with a lot of service providers still. We work with some small organisations, some large ones, to acquire and to seek the right outcomes so we get the right skills. But we want to build a sustainable organisation. This isn't kind of a passing service for us. Enterprise adoption of cloud is critical to our new agile application delivery. So we need to build that organisation, and it's very important. And some of the retraining we're doing now to help colleagues to understand how you can move from your traditional background into some of these roles is really important, and we need to continue to do that. Automation, we still do a lot of things manually, and it's again one of the things that we need to absolutely become much more better at, and that will then support, for example, our ability to move workloads from one environment to another, to different cloud providers if necessary. So we want to make sure that we have the ability to automate as much as possible. I was really impressed, and I'm pretty sure I did hear this when Steve Schmidt at reInvent last year in the security session said that they have one person on call for security. If anyone else was there, I'm not sure, throughout the night, so follow the sun process. And I'm pretty sure that for the global environment, through automation, before we get to eyes on glass, you're already too late. To get to that point of already through automation, security events are managed and dealt with, and with one person on call globally, on a follow the sun basis, is fantastic. And that kind of automation is exactly what we want to do as part of the department's adoption of cloud as well. Security is very important to us, and how we do that securely. Steve Schmidt, who, for those who don't know, is the Chief Security Officer for Amazon Web Services. So that's really what's next for us. And that's my run-through of where we are in DWP. I wanted to open it up for questions, and hopefully there's enough time for, I believe there's lots of time for questions, which is great.
We've got about 10 minutes. So.
10 minutes, excellent. So I wanted to take the opportunity, take any questions. Thank you.
Just jump over here. It's good to hear from someone who's got the more of a, I'm not want to use the word mature stack, but you've got a range. You've got the new web stuff, you've got the old mainframe stuff, and you had your steps to adoption slide a few back. And we all like to think, we're 2.5, we're 3, but you've got a range of things. You've got new platforms, which are going to be right over on that side, but you also have some of this really old mainframe stuff, which is probably some of your most resilient, not resilience, but the stuff that's absolutely core to your business. Mm-hmm. I mean, I presume what sort of timeline have you got on that? Or
So we've
what
actually
plans on
started
that?
on our mainframe services. We've got something called the MVS platform, which we are actively re-architecting applications to move those off. So a couple of good examples is notifications online, which is an HMRC service, and new tax credits. So we're taking those services and taking those off the mainframe and starting to re-architect those to move across. It's not as simple as we'd expect. There's a lot of work to do to reverse engineer in some cases, the code, a lot of integration issues. One of the things that we found, probably the most helpful challenge for us so far is around our view that you just take something and move it across and the integration will just work. We actually have an integration team that are creating a number of APIs, and the challenge we've had is actually helping them as well, as we've got a number of first consumers to get all of those underlying integration services up and running at those APIs. And actually, it may have delayed us 9, 12 months, but it doesn't matter, because what that's done is that it's given us a path now to take more applications and reuse those services. So it is a journey. I think over the next few years, we want to absolutely accelerate that. When I first started at DWP, I asked how long the data centers, everyone's view was the data centers that have just gone in were going to be around for. I said, well, it's going to be 5 years, isn't it? And one of my colleagues, one of my peers said 20 years, and another one said 10 years. So we've got this broad range, but actually we are now starting to move the services across. I mentioned VMware on AWS at the start, and we've actually moved 6 or 7 applications onto there now. But we don't want to necessarily, and that's for cost benefits in the main. We are also taking the end of support aspects of those and re-architecting those where possible. But we don't just want to lift and shift. We do want to actually look at what we do with those applications and really transform them as well. So I think we're looking at probably between 5 and 10 years, but we've started that journey already.
Okay, anybody else? There we go. Keep your hand up, I've lost you. There we go, thanks.
You mentioned that the integration between your legacy and your new systems was strategic to your comms choices and the development. I'm just interested to know how you bridge that gap.
And sorry, the comms, could you repeat the second part?
Yeah, so between your legacy systems and the stuff that you move into a cloud-based provision, you've used the network aspects, I'm assuming, and how have you bridged that gap between old and new?
So if I go back to this slide here, the connectivity that we put in place 18 months ago, is it suitable now? No. So what we've done is we've enabled, to enable adoption and to enable traffic flow between our legacy systems and new systems, connectivity between our data centers and cloud providers. But as we start to access more applications and our engineering teams, or product teams develop more applications and put them into public cloud, why do we want to put all of our traffic flows from our 860 sites all the way across into our data center and then funnel those through into public cloud? So we need to start to iterate it. So it's been really important to have that connectivity to be able to make sure we can have the right API calls. We can then start to access applications that still need to talk to systems on our mainframes and other critical national infrastructure. But going forward, we want to create a new network strategy, a zero trust based network that then starts to talk from a site in a job center straight across the network, straight into public cloud. So Office 365, for example, we're looking at moving to Office 365, using other services like ServiceNow. We don't want to push those all through our data centers. Our data center will just become a hub and spoke for the entire environment. And with cloud, we want to have that flexibility. So I think as time goes along in the next year or so, we'll start to see our network strategy evolve so that we move away from some of these environments. I think the other thing is that as we started, and this is about the journey and the cultural change as well, and I didn't mention that in a lot of detail, but there is big cultural changes around security. Our consumption of services from providers used to be fill in a piece of paper, send that off by email, you'd get a quote, and off they'd go and do something with some governance. We don't operate in that mode anymore. We have to do it ourselves. So there's a cultural change as well around, is the security of that okay? We may inspect that traffic umpteen times. Do we need to do that? Well, no, because there could be controls that are further up the stack. It could be in public cloud. So there's a trust aspect as well.
Okay.
Faster.
I'm coming.
Thank you. What have you learned from other parts of the civil service that have got further along this journey already?
Well, if our CTO was here, he would say we're the leading ones. Absolutely. Juan Villamil would say we're absolutely leading. So previously I was at the Home Office, and we did a lot at the Home Office as well. We talked to HMRC and talked to other organisations as well in the civil service. But actually, it's not necessarily the right thing to do, is just look at government. Talking to other organisations, we talked to some commercial organisations in energy, banking and other sectors to understand. And some of the challenges we've got absolutely resonate with them as well. So other departments are doing some great work. A lot of them are looking at the same journey. They have different priorities. Some may not want to look at the transitional aspect of moving off old environments, but just be able to deliver new ones. But I wouldn't say that I would absolutely love to say we are leading. We're leading in certain aspects, but we may not be in others. And so we work and we collaborate together. There is a cross-government cloud working group now, at senior levels as well, so that we can collaborate and understand things more around the commercial aspects, around some of the resourcing, and even to the point of saying, well, are we putting too much into cloud providers? Is this the right approach? So we always test each other and look at what we're doing. But for example, next week I have a meeting with HMRC around what they're doing and how we can collaborate together to share some more services. Ministry of Justice are another organisation, and HMCTS, Majesty's Court Service, which are doing some great work as well. So lots of fantastic work across the entire civil service.
Got time for one more quick one, if anybody's got a last question. Okay.
Hiya. The company I work for, we do a bit of work for the DVLA.
Oh, yes.
And
yep.
I was really interested in what you said about getting non-technical and technical groups working in cohesion. Like, how have you managed that? I'm interested to know more about your...
Sure. So it's only recent that there's always a desire to be inclusive in terms of making sure that anyone who works across the environment, across our digital teams, feel that they understand and have an understanding and as part of the change and transformation we're doing. So there's 2 or 3 things we've done recently, because actually the focus has been more around the technology aspects, get the technical services built, build those shared services, but that hasn't necessarily brought along our finance colleagues and our security colleagues and all of those that need to understand around training and HR around some of the aspects of the change that we have to undertake. So the first thing we've done is massively increased our training profile. There's a load of fantastic free training courses for cloud providers on the internet. Amazon's Certified Cloud Practitioner is great for those who are not very technical but have some technical interest, but also around some of the basics around some of the benefits. So that's been really helpful. So offering those and communicating that has been really helpful. The next thing is we ran roadshows and we held separate sessions. And we intentionally did that, and that's the part that we've had the most positive feedback on, is making sure that those who wanted what we describe as a 101 into what is cloud, no questions barred, anything you want to know, what does it actually mean, what does it look like, and taking everyone through a baseline session through there, technical colleagues moving into developers, kind of technical sessions, took everyone to a baseline understanding, and then into separate sessions on this roadshow to talk about cost, recruitment, training, even agile delivery. What does that mean in an organisation that has worked on waterfall project plans and working with providers? That's a massive change as well. And I think as we continue to do that, it will bring more and more non-technical colleagues along as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Diptesh. I think we're
problems.
just out of time there. That's great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, everybody.